1 Kings chapter 13. One day Jeroboam was standing at the altar in Bethel, ready to make an offering. Suddenly one of God's prophets arrived from Judah and shouted,
"The Lord sent me with a message about this altar. A child named Josiah will be born into David's family. He will sacrifice on this altar the priests who make offerings here, and human bones will be burned on it. You will know that the Lord has said these things when the altar splits in half and the ashes on it fall to the ground."
Jeroboam pointed at the prophet and shouted,
"Grab him!"
But right away Jeroboam's hand became stiff and he could not move it. The altar split in half and the ashes fell to the ground, just as the prophet had warned.
"Please pray to the Lord your God and ask him to heal my hand,"
Jeroboam begged. The prophet prayed and Jeroboam's hand was healed.
"Come home with me and eat something,"
Jeroboam said.
"I want to give you a gift for what you have done."
"No, I wouldn't go with you even if you offered me half of your kingdom. I won't eat or drink here either. The Lord said I can't eat or drink anything, and that I can't go home the same way I came."
Then he started home down a different road. At that time an old prophet lived in Bethel, and one of his sons told him what the prophet from Judah had said and done.
"Show me which way he went,"
the old prophet said, and his sons pointed out the road.
"Put a saddle on my donkey,"
he told them. After they did, he got on the donkey and rode off to look for the prophet from Judah. The old prophet found him sitting under an oak tree and asked,
"Are you the prophet from Judah?
"Yes, I am."
Come home with me
the old prophet said.
and have something to eat."
"I can't go back with you,
The prophet replied.
and I can't eat or drink anything with you. The Lord warned me not to eat or drink, or to go home the same way I came."
The old prophet said,
"I'm a prophet too. One of the Lord's angels told me to take you to my house and give you something to eat and drink."
The prophet from Judah did not know that the old prophet was lying, so he went home with him and ate and drank. During the meal, the Lord gave the old prophet a message for the prophet from Judah.
Listen to the Lord's message. You have disobeyed the Lord your God. He told you not to eat or drink anything here, but you came home and ate with me. And so, when you die, your body won't be buried in your family tomb."
After the meal, the old prophet got a donkey ready, and the prophet from Judah left. Along the way, a lion attacked and killed him, and the donkey and the lion stood there beside his dead body. Some people walked by and saw the body with the lion standing there. They ran into Bethel, telling everyone what they had seen. When the old prophet heard the news, he said,
"That must be the prophet from Judah. The Lord warned him, but he disobeyed. So the Lord sent a lion to kill him."
The old prophet told his sons to saddle his donkey, and when it was ready, he left. He found the body lying on the road with the donkey and the lion standing there. The lion had not eaten the body or attacked the donkey. The old prophet picked up the body, put it on his own donkey, and took it back to Bethel so he could bury it and mourn for the prophet from Judah. He buried the body in his own family tomb and cried for the prophet. He said to his sons,
"When I die, bury my body next to this prophet. I am sure that everything he said about the altar in Bethel and the shrines in Samaria will happen."
But Jeroboam kept on doing evil things. He appointed men to be priests at the local shrines, even if they were not Levites. In fact, anyone who wanted to be a priest could be one. This sinful thing led to the downfall of his kingdom. 1 Kings chapter 14. About the same time, Abijah, son of Jeroboam, got sick. Jeroboam told his wife,
"Disguise yourself so no one will know you're my wife. Then go to Shiloh, where the prophet Ahijah lives. Take him 10 loaves of bread, some small cakes, and honey, and ask him what will happen to our son. He can tell you, because he's the one who told me I would become king."
She got ready and left for Ahijah's house in Shiloh. Ahijah was now old and blind, but the Lord told him,
Jeroboam's wife is coming to ask about her son. I will tell you what to say to her.
Jeroboam's wife came to Ahijah's house, pretending to be someone else. But when Ahijah heard her walking up to the door, he said,
Come in. I know you're Jeroboam's wife. Why are you pretending to be someone else? I have some bad news for you. Give your husband this message from the Lord God of Israel. Jeroboam, you know that I, the Lord, chose you over anyone else to be the leader of my people Israel. I even took David's kingdom away from his family and gave it to you. But you are not like my servant David. He always obeyed me and did what was right. You have made me very angry by rejecting me and making idols out of gold. Jeroboam, you have done more evil things than any king before you. Because of this, I will destroy your family by killing every man and boy in it, whether slave or free. I will wipe out your family just as fire burns up trash. Dogs will eat the bodies of your relatives who die in town, and vultures will eat the bodies of those who die in the country. I, the Lord, have spoken, and will not change my mind. That's the Lord's message to your husband. As for you, go back home, and right after you get there, your son will die. Everyone in Israel will mourn at his funeral. But he will be the last one from Jeroboam's family to receive a proper burial, because he's the only one the Lord God of Israel is pleased with. The Lord will soon choose a new king of Israel, who will destroy Jeroboam's family. And I mean very soon. The people of Israel have made the Lord angry by setting up sacred poles for worshipping the goddess Asherah. So the Lord will punish them until they shake like grass in a stream. He will take them out of the land he gave to their ancestors, then scatter them as far away as the Euphrates River. Jeroboam sinned and caused the Israelites to sin. Now the Lord will desert Israel.
Jeroboam's wife left and went back home to the town of Tirzah. As soon as she set foot in her house, her son died. Everyone in Israel came and mourned at his funeral, just as the Lord's servant Ahijah had said. Everything else Jeroboam did while he was king, including the battles he won, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. He was king of Israel for 22 years. Then he died, and his son Nadab became king. Rehoboam, son of Solomon, was 41 years old when he became king of Judah, and he ruled 17 years from Jerusalem, the city where the Lord had chosen to be worshipped. His mother Naamah was from Ammon. The people of Judah disobeyed the Lord and made him even angrier than their ancestors had. They also built their own local shrines and stone images of foreign gods, and they set up sacred poles for worshiping the goddess Asherah on every hill and in the shade of large trees. Even worse, they allowed prostitutes at the shrines and followed the disgusting customs of the foreign nations that the Lord had forced out of Canaan. After Rehoboam had been king for 4 years, King Shishak of Egypt attacked Jerusalem. He took everything of value from the temple and the palace, including Solomon's gold shields. Rehoboam had bronze shields made to replace the gold ones, and he ordered the guards at the city gates to keep them safe. Whenever Rehoboam went to the Lord's temple, the guards carried the shields, but they always took them back to the guard room as soon as he was finished. Everything else Rehoboam did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Judah. He and Jeroboam were constantly at war. Rehoboam's mother Naamah was from Ammon, but when Rehoboam died, he was buried beside his ancestors in Jerusalem. His son Abijam then became king. 1 Kings chapter 15. Abijam became king of Judah in Jeroboam's 18th year as king of Israel, and he ruled from Jerusalem for 3 years. His mother was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. Abijam did not truly obey the Lord his God as his ancestor David had done. Instead, he was sinful just like his father Rehoboam. David had always obeyed the Lord's commands by doing right, except in the case of Uriah. And since Abijam was David's great-grandson, the Lord kept Jerusalem safe and let Abijam have a son who would be the next king. The war that had broken out between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continued during the time that Abijam was king. Everything else Abijam did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Judah. Abijam died and was buried in Jerusalem, and his son Asa became king. Asa became king of Judah in the 20th year of Jeroboam's rule in Israel, and he ruled 41 years from Jerusalem. His grandmother was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. Asa obeyed the Lord as David had done. He forced the prostitutes at the shrines to leave the country, and he got rid of the idols his ancestors had made. His own grandmother, Maacah, had made an idol of Asherah, and Asa took it and burned it in Kidron Valley. Then he removed Maacah from her position as queen mother. As long as Asa lived, he was completely faithful to the Lord, even though he did not destroy the local shrines. He placed in the temple all the silver and gold objects that he and his father had dedicated to the Lord. Asa was always at war with King Baasha of Israel. One time, Baasha invaded Judah and captured the town of Ramah. He started making the town stronger so he could put troops there to stop people from going in and out of Judah. When Asa heard about this, he took the silver and gold from his palace and from the Lord's temple. He gave it to some of his officials and sent them to Damascus with this message for King Ben-Hadad of Syria.
Our father signed a peace treaty. Why don't we do the same thing? This silver and gold is a present for you. So, would you please break your treaty with Baasha and force him to leave my country?
Ben-Hadad did what Asa asked and sent the Syrian army into Israel. They captured the towns of Ijon, Dan, and Abel-Beth-Maacah, and the territories of Kinneroth and Naphtali. When Baasha heard about it, he left Ramah and went back to Tirzah. Asa ordered everyone in Judah to carry away the stones and wood Baasha had used to strengthen the town of Ramah. Then he used these same stones and wood to fortify the town of Geba in the territory of Benjamin and the town of Mizpah. Everything else Asa did while he was king, including his victories and the towns he rebuilt, is written in the history of the kings of Judah. When he got older, he had a foot disease. Asa died and was buried in the tomb of his ancestors in Jerusalem. His son Jehoshaphat then became king. Nadab, son of Jeroboam, became king of Israel in Asa's second year as king of Judah, and he ruled 2 years. Nadab disobeyed the Lord by following the evil example of his father, who had caused the Israelites to sin. Baasha, son of Ahijah, was from the tribe of Issachar, and he made plans to kill Nadab. When Nadab and his army went to attack the town of Gibbethon in Philistia, Baasha killed Nadab there. So in the 3rd year of Asa's rule, Baasha became king of Israel. The Lord's prophet Ahijah had earlier said,
"Not one man or boy in Jeroboam's family will be left alive."
And as soon as Baasha became king, he killed everyone in Jeroboam's family, because Jeroboam had made the Lord God of Israel angry by sinning and causing the Israelites to sin. Everything else Nadab did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Israel. King Asa of Judah and King Baasha of Israel were always at war. Baasha, son of Ahijah, became king of Israel in Asa's 3rd year as king of Judah, and he ruled 24 years from Tirzah. Baasha also disobeyed the Lord by acting like Jeroboam, who had caused the Israelites to sin. 1 Kings chapter 16. The Lord sent Jehu, son of Hanani, to say to Baasha,
Nobody knew who you were until I, the Lord, chose you to be the leader of my people Israel. And now you're acting exactly like Jeroboam by causing the Israelites to sin. What you've done has made me so angry that I will destroy you and your family, just as I did the family of Jeroboam. Dogs will eat the bodies of your relatives who die in town, and vultures will eat the bodies of those who die in the country.
Baasha made the Lord very angry, and that's why the Lord gave Jehu this message for Baasha and his family. Baasha constantly disobeyed the Lord by following Jeroboam's sinful example. But even worse, he killed everyone in Jeroboam's family. Everything else Baasha did while he was king, including his brave deeds, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Baasha died and was buried in Tirzah, and his son Elah became king. Elah, son of Baasha, became king of Israel after Asa had been king of Judah for 25 years, and he ruled from Tirzah for 2 years. Zimri commanded half of Elah's chariots, and he made plans to kill Elah. One day, Elah was in Tirzah, getting drunk at the home of Arza, his prime minister, when Zimri went there and killed Elah. So Zimri became king in the 27th year of Asa's rule in Judah. As soon as Zimri became king, he killed everyone in Baasha's family. Not one man or boy in his family was left alive. Even his close friends were killed. Baasha's family was completely wiped out, just as the Lord's prophet Jehu had warned. Baasha and Elah sinned and caused the Israelites to sin, and they made the Lord angry by worshiping idols. Everything else Elah did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Zimri became king of Israel in Asa's 27th year as king of Judah, but he ruled only 7 days from Tirzah. Israel's army was camped near Gibbethon in Philistia under the command of Omri. The soldiers heard that Zimri had killed Elah, and they made Omri their king that same day. At once, Omri and his army marched to Tirzah and attacked. When Zimri saw that the town was captured, he ran into the strongest part of the palace and killed himself by setting it on fire. Zimri had disobeyed the Lord by following the evil example of Jeroboam, who had caused the Israelites to sin. Everything else Zimri did while he was king, including his rebellion against Elah, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. After Zimri died, some of the Israelites wanted Tibni, son of Ginath, to be king, but others wanted Omri. Omri's followers were stronger than Tibni's, so Tibni was killed, and Omni became king of Israel in the 31st year of Asa's rule in Judah. Omri ruled Israel for 12 years. The first 6 years he ruled from Tirzah. Then he bought the hill of Samaria from Shemer for about 150 pounds of silver. He built a town there and named it Samaria, after Shemer, who had owned the hill. Omri did more evil things than any king before him. He acted just like Jeroboam and made the Lord God of Israel angry by causing the Israelites to sin and to worship idols. Everything else Omri did while he was king, including his brave deeds, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Omri died and was buried in Samaria, and his son Ahab became king. Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel in the 38th year of Asa's rule in Judah, and he ruled 22 years from Samaria. Ahab did more things to disobey the Lord than any king before him. He acted just like Jeroboam. Even worse, he married Jezebel, the daughter of King Ethabaal of Sidon, and started worshiping Baal. Ahab built an altar and temple for Baal in Samaria and set up a sacred pole for worshiping the goddess Asherah. Ahab did more to make the Lord God of Israel angry than any king of Israel before him. While Ahab was king, a man from Bethel named Hiel rebuilt the town of Jericho. But while Hiel was laying the foundation for the town wall, his oldest son Abiram died. And while he was finishing the gates, his youngest son Segub died. This happened just as the Lord had told Joshua to say many years ago.